Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I cannot believe it is February. I feel like January was like the longest month ever, but I feel like every single year that happens, January just drags on. But we are in the second month of 2020, and you know, I was doing some research for the stories today, and it's just so cool to see, you know, all these kind deeds, random acts of kindness, like, happen all around the world, and it's just, like, so exciting to be able to, you know, share these stories with you guys. But I thought I would start today's episode for all you animal lovers out there, and all of you Valentine's Day goers, you know, there's some people that are kind of anti-Valentine's Day. But if you aren't anti-Valentine's Day, you're not going to want to miss this story. So if you're looking for the absolute perfect gift for your loved one, look no further for Valentine's Day. This is amazing. So Tennessee's Animal Shelter of Sullivan County is going to help you spoil your loved one on Valentine's Day. So they are actually offering Pupper Grams is what they're calling it. Basically to all the animal lovers out there that are looking for a special gift. So there is limited amounts of Pupper Grams to be purchased from the shelter, and you can order them to be delivered the 13th or the 14th of February. But this is exactly what the Pupper Gram entails. It is amazing. So it is an office visit from one of the shelter's adorable puppies. So the puppies will deliver your loved one 2 dozen roses and a red velvet pup cake, or you can choose a dozen chocolate dipped bacon roses with a 1-hour axe throwing pass. So they're kind of catering to women and men. You can choose which one, but I just think this is so cool. And you can order this Pupper Gram to your house. You have to do it to like an office visit, like the person's work. But it's definitely cool that they have those 2 options. You can kind of customize it to the person that you're giving this to. So it's going to be, and then after, like, the puppies are going to be available for adoption that do come to the office. So any, like, people that might want to adopt, then these puppies are going to be up for adoption just shortly after Valentine's Day. There is only a limited number of Pupper Grams available for purchase, so get on this if you're in the Tennessee area and you want to send a Pupper Gram to your loved one. I think that is like the coolest gift ever. When I was first reading this, I was like, a Pupper Gram, like, are they actually like giving away puppies? But no. But just a little puppy delivery with some roses or, you know, some other cool stuff. I think it's such a unique idea. One of the best parts is that all the funds that are raised through the Pupper Grams will go back to the shelter to help the facility care for animals and find them loving homes. So, you know, it all comes full circle. You are doing an amazing gift for your loved one, in my opinion. And then, of course, you're helping out the shelter to take care of these puppies. I'm going to keep on the puppy train. So you may have heard about Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle Derek Natty. He's been praised on social media for after he was celebrating the win of Super Bowl. He actually was he covered the pet adoption fees for 109 animals at his local shelter, which is just amazing. Kind of such a cool way to celebrate your victory of the Super Bowl. So now Coors Light is actually wanting to reinforce his good deed for Valentine's Day. So Coors Light is encouraging people to adopt a dog ahead before Valentine's Day, and they're even offering to foot the bill for them. So between February 4th and the 21st, Coors is volunteering to pay up to 1,000 dog adoptions across the United States, which I think is so cool. So they're going to be covering up to $100 for each rescued animal, and then that's actually going to result in more than $100,000 worth of free adoptions. I love Valentine's Day, how it's like being centered around puppies so much, and people are just doing all these good deeds to get them adopted. But you don't need to purchase any beer of Coors Light or anything like that to be qualified. But you must be 21 or older to be reimbursed for the adoption. And then state residents from California, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia are excluded from the initiative, and participants will only be reimbursed through the Venmo banking app. So those are kind of the requirements to get reimbursed for your puppy adoption. So after you get reimbursed through the app, you are actually required to submit a photo of the adoption receipt by texting it along to 28130, and then the phrase Coors for Canine. So those are the requirements that you have to do, but you get basically your free adopted puppy. And so that is definitely really cool. But hey, you really can't go wrong with a free adopted puppy on Valentine's Day. Talk about the perfect gift ever. If the Pupper Gram isn't enough for you, you can actually just get them a puppy. My next story is for all you Minnesota homeowners. So if you are a Minnesota homeowner, you don't want to miss this. So the state has actually set aside $900,000 over 1 year to assist homeowners by covering much of the cost of converting traditional lawns by planting wildflowers, clover, and native grasses. And this is in the effort to slow the collapse of the state's bee population. So, yeah, $900,000 they set aside just for Minnesota homeowners to do this. So their goal is to provide food sources for pollinators of all kinds, but will specifically aim at saving the rusty-patched bumblebee, which is, that fat, fuzzy species that are actually on the brink of maybe being extinct. And so this kind of seems to be making its final stand in the cities of the upper Midwest. So this is kind of what they're trying to do. The loss of the native prairies and forests across the country has made the pollinators more dependent on urban and suburban lawn flowers. And that was told by James Wolfen, who is a bee habitat researcher at the University of Minnesota. So his research has focused on bee lawns, is what they're calling it. So it's grassy yards that are interspersed with small flowers, like a Dutch white clover, creeping thyme, self-heal, ground plum, and dandelions. So these are just kind of some options. So he says just by not treating white clover like a weed and letting it grow in a yard provides a really powerful resource for nearly 20% of the bee species in the states. So this program is beginning the spring of 2020, so it's coming up here, and citizens living in a rusty patch bumblebee zones are eligible for grants up to $500, while people living in zones of secondary and territorial importance to bees are eligible for $350 and $150 respectively. So it kind of depends on where you're living, but you are going to be qualified to get some of this money to, help the bees. So considering there's a 1 pound bag of clover seeds costs as little as $10, and it literally spreads like a weed. Literally your 1 pound that costs you $10 should be plenty to cover it. And then you literally have all this additional money. So it's crazy. You can do so much to your yard to try to help out, which is definitely really cool. But yeah, so for all you Minnesota homeowners, do what you can to help the bees from going extinct. I know, I think bumblebees are super cute. It's the wasps that I don't like, but the bumblebees we gotta keep around. So do what you can to try to keep these bees around. Okay, so that is all I have for you right now. It is time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere. I have so many more stories to share with you. Like I said, it's like the second month of 2020, and I'm just like so happy to see all the amazing, cool things that people are doing already in 2020. It's so cool to share. But these Pupper Grams, I have to say, if I was close to Tennessee, I would definitely even just be getting one for myself. Okay, stay tuned for more amazing stories. Thank you.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. So I have a couple stories about an event that you may or may not have watched over the past weekend, and that is the Super Bowl. If you caught one of the last episodes, I talked to you about the amount of food that is consumed on Super Bowl Sunday. It is absolutely crazy. I'll give you the numbers again. So roughly 28 million pounds of chips, 1.25 billion chicken wings, and 8 million pounds of guacamole are said to be consumed during Super Bowl Sunday. I hope a lot of you did participate in these large number of food, and I'm sure like a lot of people had Super Bowl parties, a lot of restaurants, bars, pubs, big stadiums, like where the Super Bowl was held, they're catering to so many different people, and there's so much food being displayed, and that means that there could also potentially be a lot of waste, right? And a lot of food could be thrown out. So, thanks to the work of several nonprofit organizations and their volunteers, an estimated 30,000 pounds of food will be distributed to 5 different shelters in southern Florida this week. This is absolutely huge. So this is kind of like the aftermath of Super Bowl Sunday, all the food. So instead of throwing it out, they're able to donate to different shelters in southern Florida. So I thought this was kind of pretty cool. This is a major food recovery effort to follow the Super Bowl. It's never really been like this before. The food that was collected, is from catered VIP sections, concession stands, suites, and any leftovers included everything from beef tenderloin, barbecue chicken, ribs, cheese, crackers, all that kind of stuff that they could kind of rescue and distribute to different shelters. They've done that. So volunteers from Food Rescue US, the Center Plate Hospitality, and the NFL Green Initiative have worked in shifts kind of off and on to get the food out of the stadium and into trucks so that it can be delivered to Broward Outreach Center, Broward Partnership for the Homeless, the Community's House, Lotus House Shelter, and the Miami Rescue Mission. So there's 5 shelters right there that they were able to ship the food to and donate it to. So in 2011, Food Rescue US was founded, and this kind of happened when software developer Jeff Schaefer started to wonder what the restaurants, who used his program could do to be cutting back on all the amount of food that they throw out. So he pitched this idea to his team. They basically started calling restaurants, operators, some support agencies, and there was definitely food to save and definitely people that would need it, of course. So he explained on the Food Rescue US website, he said, now the only question left was, can we make it how can we make this process simple enough for everybody? Like, I can't imagine trying to gather 30,000 pounds of food and distribute to these different shelters. So part of the simplifying the process was eliminating the need for those restaurants or grocers to transport or store their unused food. So instead, Food Rescue US relies on volunteers who go to the participating food donor restaurants, grocers, whatever it is. They collect the items that would have otherwise been thrown away in the garbage, and then they deliver them directly to the shelters, food pantries, or community kitchens. I think it's definitely a cool program. So this approach seems to be working since 2011. So Food Rescue US says it has delivered enough food to prepare 36 million meals, and it has kept 50 million pounds of still edible goods out of trash bins and landfills. That is so cool. So since they did this for the Super Bowl now, it was a huge success. They got to distribute to lots of different areas and definitely saved a lot of food. 30,000 pounds of food. It's a lot. So they want to continue this for next year. So Food Rescue US is going to be continuing this, and I think it's kind of cool. There is definitely a lot of food that gets consumed on Super Bowl Sunday, but then that also means that there's a lot of food that probably gets thrown away. So good on Food Rescue US to deliver 30,000 pounds of food that was going to be thrown out to different shelters that definitely need it. So that's my first Super Bowl story for you. Now, my next one is about Super Bowl ads. All of the advertisements on Super Bowl Sunday are so interesting. Personally, it's like part of my favorite part of Super Bowl Sunday because I just find the advertisements can be, they're either hilarious or they're super heartwarming. You kind of get a mixture of everything, and I just love watching the different ones, and they're so creative. So I just love seeing it, and I feel like even on social media afterwards, people are always talking about, well, of course, like, who won Super Bowl, but then also just, like, the advertisements. Like, I think it's super fun for people, who might not be huge football fans. You kind of get to appreciate the advertisements, because I think it's a lot of fun, and, of course, the halftime show. But I do have a story about some Super Bowl ads. One in particular, Google. I don't know if you saw this ad, if you watched the Super Bowl, but Google touched so many hearts with their advertisement this year, and it kind of made a huge blow up on social media as well. Basically, Google told this very touching, simple love story about an older man trying to keep the memory of his late wife alive. So it was titled Loretta. The elderly man basically tells his Google Assistant details that he remembers about his wife. From things like how she hated his mustache to the way that she snorted when she laughed. So cute. But this was actually inspired by the story of a Google employee's grandfather. The company said in a statement, the staffer's grandfather even lent his voice to the ad. So it's actually his voice in it. Lorraine Toohill, who is Google's chief marketing officer, said in a statement, at 85 to an audience of millions, he'll be making his film debut, and we couldn't be happier for him. Lorraine kind of explained that this year's ad is similar to Google's very first Super Bowl ad. That aired in 2010, and it showed an American man finding love in Paris and what he searched to make it happen. So that ad has also based on a true story. I think it's super cool that Google does base their ads on a true story. And the commercial had people in tears. From social media posts before the halftime show, people were tweeting like, oh my gosh, that stole my heart. Like all these, I saw all these different tweets and things kind of blew up on Twitter about this heartwarming Super Bowl ad. So if you never saw it, I would definitely go and YouTube it. Go take a look. It is a super cute ad. And it's so clever. I like the companies, what they come up with for Super Bowl and their advertisements. Definitely interesting. But this one in particular has blown up and touched so many hearts. So I just thought that I would share that with you. And at 85, he's able to make his film debut. So that's pretty cool. Now, my next story is definitely a feel-good story as well. It's about Target and their new swimwear campaign. So their new campaign features models from all shapes, colors, sizes, and one model in particular with a rare skin condition. Her name is Jaza Gary, and this was her first booked big modeling gig. She's only 21 years old. And now she's a part of the 2020 Target swimwear campaign. So she has a rare skin condition called ectosis, and it kind of makes her skin look a little scaly. It's a very rare condition. But she posed in the California sunlight in a beautiful yellow bikini amongst about a dozen other women that are all in different shapes, sizes, colors. And she said that she didn't feel intimidated at all. Everyone was super accommodating and nice, and she was like just so happy to be a part of this campaign, especially for her first big one. She actually went for her modeling career because in high school, someone wrote in her yearbook that she should just go for it. And so she did. She said that she's always believed in self-love, and she says, obviously I have limitations, but I'm not the kind of person who highlights things I can't do. I just work around them. And I think that's an awesome message to so many different women. So she's been modeling for about 2 years, and she signed with a New York agency just last May. But I love this Target campaign. The Target representative, Courtney Foster, said, "We are looking to ensure the models we partner with are truly representative of our guests. We want our guests to see themselves reflected in our campaign." So they've actually done a similar campaign like this for years. They want it to reflect, have models that look like regular people because they're marketing regular people. So there's no better way to do that, right? So they've actually done similar campaigns for years, and they've never retouched any of their pictures, which I think is definitely, that's unheard of for a lot of different ad campaigns. So they've never retouched any of their pictures. They always have women in like different shapes, sizes, colors, and now with a rare skin condition. It's definitely nice to see that out there. And, but they're right. What better way to market regular people than to have models that look like regular people? Because you want to see real bodies. You want to see real skin because that's what's out there. You want to be able to relate to that. And so good for Target for coming up with this campaign. And of course, good for Jason Gary for booking her first modeling gig with this rare skin disease. I'm seeing more and more women and men going into the modeling world with different, skin conditions or, just different looks and just being accepted and kind of embraced. And it's definitely cool to see. But it is time for a little bit of a break. Don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have some more amazing feel-good stories to share with you. So stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast. My next story that I have for you is about a toddler from Maryland who went missing for nearly 10 hours. His name is Ethan, and he's only 2 years old. But luckily, a postal worker found him walking barefoot along the highway. This story is a little bit crazy. So the postal worker's his name is Keith Rollins, and he found Ethan shivering, wet, and barefoot, literally just walking down the highway. And he was actually missing for 10 hours. So he ran away from family members outside his home in Elk Ridge, Maryland. He basically followed someone outside the house and then disappeared about 10:20 p.m. And Keith actually found him, like, the next morning at 8 a.m. when he was driving. So this little guy was wandering around for quite some time, shivering. All he had on was a sweatshirt and some sweatpants. He had no socks. He had no shoes. He was just literally wandering around. So as soon as they noticed that Ethan was gone, the family contacted the police. Immediately, the police sent, fire personnel, canine units, drones, aircraft, and helicopters from neighboring departments to go search for little Ethan. Neighbors also were, looking around the area, the community. So they sent out this huge search party to find Ethan right away, but it was actually a stranger, the postal man Keith, who ended up finding little Ethan. So Keith was driving around 8 a.m. the next day, and he basically just saw something kind of unusual. He didn't know if it was like an animal or not. He kind of just like saw a head. And so he walked over to Ethan and, tried to talk to him. And Ethan is actually on the autism spectrum. He's currently non-verbal at all, but he's yet to be diagnosed just because of his young age. But he claps in response to his name. So Keith went up and tried to talk to him, ask if he was all right. Just tried to get something out of him, but he's nonverbal, so he didn't really say anything. Keith grabbed one of his sweaters that he had in the truck, wrapped it around him and put him in the truck with the heat, and then instantly called 911. Within a few minutes, 911 did come and grabbed Ethan. Ethan was taken to the hospital where he was treated for hypothermia, but he is doing okay. He's with his family, and he's healthy, and he's happy, and everything's all right. And so, they were kind of praising Keith as a hero who saved the day, but he said that he doesn't see that way at all. He says, giving glory to God that I was able to help at that particular time and be in the correct place at the right time. But a hero? Nah, not at all. So he's kind of giving this praise to God for being in the right place. But I cannot imagine little Ethan, 2 years old, wandering around for 10 hours. Ethan and his family are definitely very lucky that Keith was in the right place at the right time to save him. So now my next story, from a 2-year-old to a 107-year-old. His name is Joe Newman, and he absolutely loves driving his Mercedes at 107 years old. He is the oldest man in his independent living facility in Sarasota, Florida, and he is still loving to drive his Mercedes. I think this is so cool. He says, sure, I have aches and pains, but I dance as fast as anybody else in that place. And I guess he also drives as fast. He's pretty well known locally because he loves taking spins in his cherry red 320 Mercedes hardtop coupe, which he actually bought from his podiatrist when he was 103 years old. So he said, first time I saw it, my heart was beating faster. He loves cruising around town with his fiancée, Anita Sampson, and Anita is actually turning 100 years old next month. So they love cruising around and enjoying every moment that they have together, they say. His driver's license doesn't expire until 2022, but he admits he isn't putting many miles on the car these days. On date nights, often to the opera or the ballet, he and his fiancée will prefer just to take an Uber. He says, I accept the fact that driving is a responsibility, and a person 107 ought to be concerned about getting out on the highway. Anita and I are thinking about getting rid of the car or giving it away. I don't want people to be afraid that I'm on the road. I think that just shows a lot that he says that right there, but he does love going for cruises around in his Mercedes. He's amazing. He also ran for a seat in the House of Representatives at age 101. Pretty cool, but he hopes to be remembered for the Logan Center. This is an organization that supports people with intellectual and development disabilities in his former home of South Bend, Indiana. So him and his late wife, Sophia, founded the organization back in 1950 with just $24 in the bank. They had only one child. Her name was Rita Jo. And she was born disabled and wasn't allowed to attend public school. So on the first day, they were expecting 12 students, but 22 showed up. And now today, the center has a budget of $14 million and a few hundred students. Talk about growth from 1950. But he says that him and his fiance love enjoying dancing. They've actually even been talking about going on a hot air balloon ride. And for her 100th birthday, at the end of March, he's going to be renting a karaoke machine or hire a singer to sing songs that we remember. Definitely an inspirational 107-year-old man that I thought I just had to share with you. Still driving around his Mercedes. He even went for a seat of representatives at 103 years old. But mostly important, he wants to be known for his organization to help people, that are intellectually held back because of their development disabilities and all of that. So it's definitely pretty cool to see the growth from 1950 now to this organization. All right, so I saved my favorite story of this episode for the very last one because I just think it's amazing. It's about a new project that has kind of come out. It is a texting platform, and it's basically designed to spread kindness, and I just absolutely love it. So this texting platform, it's called Text for Humanity. And it's basically the world's first texting switchboard. So it's launched by a company, by cloud communications, company called Cinch. And they're in partnership with Mental Health America. And basically what Text for Humanity is aiming for is just to fight against social isolation. So what you can do is send a text that you would love to get to a complete stranger, and then in return, you receive a text that someone in the world right now needs to hear. Which I just think it's so cool. So you can basically send a text to anyone in the world, and you can receive a text from anyone in the world. And, it helps people, when you're talking to a stranger and you don't know who you're talking to, you can be open and honest and say whatever you want. So that's kind of what their goal is. So all you have to do is just text JOIN to the corresponding Text for Humanity phone number for your country. You can find that up on the internet, what corresponding number is for your country. Then you just text JOIN and you're a part of it. So then after that, users, you're just going to be asked for like your first name, your country of origin, and that's it. And then you get to write a kind message, and you can write it up to 160 characters long. And then each text is then sent to another random user somewhere in the world, and then in return, you also get a sweet text from another random stranger. So it's literally you're like talking to random strangers, just spreading kindness, trying to like cheer people up, like anywhere in the world, basically. And if you need a kind message to hear, you just send a kind message out, and then you'll receive one. You can send and receive up to 5 texts every single day. This service is launched across 23 different countries just in the last month. More than 7,000 kind texts have already been exchanged. And so the Mental Health America CEO and President Paul Gianfrido said, "We know there is a lot of negativity online these days, and by taking a minute to deliver a simple, positive message to someone who may need it, each of us can help brighten someone's day and lift up their overall mental well-being." I think that's so true. Sometimes all it takes is just a simple text or, just a simple saying, just like, "I appreciate you, hope you have a good day," whatever it is, it doesn't matter. A simple text can just completely turn someone's day around. So I just love that this platform has come out, literally just designed to spread kindness. So I thought that would be a great way to end today's episode. But thank you so much for listening to today's episode of GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I had such an amazing time sharing these feel-good, awesome stories with you. As always, do not forget to hit that subscribe button to like and follow us on social media and leave a 5-star review. It is always greatly appreciated, and I look forward to next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news and and even weird news. The GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.